The first time Eliza spoke, no one believed her, and that hurt more than the bruises on her arms or the way her voice shook. When she tried to explain, the town of Red Willow had always been small, the kind of place where secrets didn't survive, and rumors grew faster than crops in spring. But this time, the rumor was about her, and it painted her as a liar. She stood in front of the sheriff's desk, fingers twisting into each other, eyes swollen from crying, and said in a barely audible voice that something terrible had happened on the old Carter ranch. No one asked how she felt. No one asked what she needed. They only asked for proof, and when she had none, they shook their heads like disappointed parents and told her to go home. Outside, the town gathered in clusters, whispering, pointing, watching her walk past as if she were some kind of spectacle. That was the moment the name stuck. Liar. Some said it softly, some said it loudly, but everyone said it. The Carter Ranch sat on the edge of town, stretching into dusty hills and wide skies, owned by a man who rarely spoke and never explained himself. Daniel Carter was known as a hard worker, a quiet man, the kind who tipped his hat instead of saying hello, the kind who fixed fences instead of joining gossip circles. He had lived there his whole life, buried his parents on the hill behind the barn, and built his reputation with calloused hands and early mornings. When Eliza's name first got dragged into town conversations, his name followed shortly after. People said she was trying to destroy him. People said she wanted attention. People said she had always been strange. Daniel said nothing. That silence became its own language. Eliza lived with her aunt in a small, sagging house near the railroad tracks. At night, trains thundered by like distant storms, and she'd press her pillow over her ears, trying to block out the sound, trying harder to block out her own thoughts. She replayed every word she had said, every look she had received, every laugh that followed her down the street. She stopped going to the diner, stopped walking through the square, stopped looking people in the eyes, because when she did, she saw disbelief, suspicion, and something worse, enjoyment. People enjoyed having a villain, and she had become theirs every morning. She woke up hoping today would be different, that someone would ask, really ask, what had happened, that someone would say, I believe you. But the town had already decided. Daniel saw her once from the edge of his field. She was walking fast, head down, hands stuffed into the pockets of a too-thin jacket. Someone shouted from across the road, "Hey, liar," followed by laughter. Daniel didn't look at them. He looked at her, and for just a second, their eyes met. Hers were full of something he couldn't name. Fear, maybe, or shame, or desperation. He turned away. That night, he sat on his porch, staring at the stars, jaw tight, hands gripping the arms of his chair. He told himself he had nothing to say, nothing to explain, nothing to confess. And yet, sleep didn't come. The town didn't let the story die. It grew. It twisted. Some said Eliza had made it all up. Some said she was paid. Some said she wanted revenge for something no one could quite remember. Every new version made her smaller and more invisible. Kids at school whispered behind her. Teachers looked uncomfortable. Even her aunt began to sigh whenever her name was mentioned, as if she were tired of defending something she wasn't sure about anymore. Eliza began to write everything down. In an old notebook with a torn cover, she wrote dates, times, words she remembered, details she was afraid to forget. Not because anyone asked her to, but because she was terrified that if she didn't, the truth would vanish completely. Some nights, she cried so hard the ink blurred under her tears. Meanwhile, Daniel kept working, fixing fences, feeding cattle, repairing a roof that didn't need repairing. Anything to stay busy, anything to avoid thinking. The town watched him closely, waiting for him to react, to shout, to deny, to threaten. But he did nothing, and somehow that made them trust him more. An innocent man doesn't need to defend himself, they said. Eliza heard that sentence more than once. Each time, it cut deeper. One evening, she passed the ranch road and saw a broken fence panel leaning crooked. Normally, she would have crossed the street to avoid it, to avoid him. But that day, she didn't. She walked past slowly, heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst out of her chest. She felt his presence before she saw him, standing near the barn, sleeves rolled up, hands covered in grease. He looked at her. Neither of them spoke. That silence stretched between them like a rope pulled too tight. And in that moment, Eliza realized something that terrified her more than anything else. He knew.